This is the Situation Room.
Thousands of Kenyans looking forward to receiving their retirement benefits could be in a rude shock after it emerged that the fund failed in its legal mandate of ensuring employers deduct money from workers and remit it on time. So this translates to the National Social Security Fund cannot account for billions of shillings of workers' monthly contributions. This puts at risk the benefits of thousands of workers who are retiring every year. It has emerged that the fund's book of accounts has a 5.6 billion shilling hole in unremitted contributions because of its failure to enforce the legal provisions mandating it to ensure that employers deduct money from workers and remit it to the fund on time.
So it's unremitted contributions.
Yes, it's unremitted contributions.
It's not that the money was contributed and then they misappropriated.
Yeah, that would be another story. But
Okay.
in this case, it's that they did not fulfill the legal mandate to make sure that, once you pay your tax, it's actually remitted. Or
How
once
do
you
we
pay
know
your,
that this is actually the case?
This is the
It's what they
question.
say, right?
Yes, because they remember, most of these remittances are deducted directly from people's salaries. Those
Yes.
are salaries.
Yeah.
Yes, so, and they could very easily have been remitted, but simply...
No.
Or they could have been
accounted for.
deducted but not remitted.
That happens, but I am not going there. No, that happens fairly often, and it's reported
But
fairly
you've
often.
seen it in the counties. Almost all the counties have had issues with.
Yes, I am talking about a situation where it is actually remitted.
Oh, right.
And then not captured.
Yes,
in
well,
the books.
it is not reported as captured. Yeah, because if it is sent, then it should be received.
Yes.
Ask anyone who's gone to check the Nssf or whatever, even NHIF contributions. And they are often shocked. They'll come with a letter from the employer saying that, indicating they have actually
My
remitted.
payslip,
Yeah, but those fellows are saying they haven't received it. They say, okay, here's my employer's letter and the details of how they've remitted it. And everyone, okay. The moment comes along, and you do. We hadn't quite,
We hadn't
Is there a
captured
brain
it.
clog? What happens? Because you're so quick to deny that such a thing was paid, and then suddenly I show you the evidence of the same, and you then,
Do you know what is really strange here? We continuously talk about corruption. We continuously talk about impunity. But the extent to which this particular rot has entered the very sinews, it's not of our society, but of our being as Kenyans, is actually profound. There is no opportunity that will be lost to try and do something crooked. It will not be.
An opportunity will present itself.
It always
Take
does, and if
advantage.
it doesn't, it will be presented.
Just on board. Who's raising these questions on the 5.6B?
well,
Is it auditor? Is it internal?
the Auditor General's report for Nssf for the year 2017-2018 financial year further casts it was their report,
it's the
and then it
AG's
goes
report.
on. Yes, it goes on to further cast doubt on the accuracy of 14 billion shillings, which is indicated as the balance of the members' contributions as of June 2018. There was a review of the members' contribution status from 183 branches across 5 regions of the fund, shows that outstanding contributions and related penalties stood at 6.3 billion as of June last year.
Well, the thing is, if as an institution you've not received amounts of money that you should have received, when they actually get to $1 billion, then and you know who you should be receiving money from, clearly,
It's a red flag.
Yeah, it's
Obviously.
a red flag.
Obviously.
You take steps to ensure. I mean, what's happening? CT, we expected you to remit X amount for your employees, and you haven't. What's happening? But if it goes all the way to the point where the Auditor General is the one who's raising queries, what had you done internally about that? Yeah. So it's,
this is a saga which is as old as time in this country. What we're experiencing now is simply an exacerbation of it. It stopped being garden variety crime. It's now full-blown card carrying. It's on a mega scale. But to understand just how tragic what we are referring to as impunity is, if you look at the Star, and if you look at the Standard, they talk about the ferry accident where a lady and her child lost their lives. It is not the first time we've had incidences of this nature at the ferry. And remember, the ferry was commissioned in 1937. It was the previous century, of course. It wasn't commissioned yesterday. Those are very, very many years ago.
this particular one, MV Harambe.
No. The function of the ferry.
Oh, the ferry.
The ferry services. They're commissioned, no. The issue is not different from other issues that we've had. What brought these disasters to the fore was when we had in 1994 the Mtongwe ferry disaster, where it was assumed at the time that the ferry had a capacity for 300. So when it capsized, it was assumed 300 people died. 300 people did actually not die. It was 272 who passed away. But the problem was that ferry was carrying 400 people on that particular day. And its capacity, which is insured for, is 300. Overloading, if you've ever been to the ferry, it is normal. Normal. For a vehicle to actually capsize, it means it wasn't within the boundaries. It was probably on the ramp.
Right.
Because what happens is that ramp goes down to allow you to come, then it goes up.
Yeah.
So if you're within it, it is not possible for a vehicle because the ramp is a barrier. You will have to hit it. And even if you hit it, it is not possible.
Yeah.
So for what we're seeing to happen, it means that if this particular vehicle, it was actually on the ramp itself. It's when it's on the ramp, that's when it is easy for it to slide off. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. But it means it happens, but now we have an incident. Now what comes to the fore, of course, is one, the incapacity that we have to manage disaster. Complete incapacity. Remember, this is the home of the Kenya Navy, yeah?
Yep.
Yes, home of Kenya Navy. Navy, Army, water, boats, rescuers, swimmers, divers. That whole whatever.
Yeah.
The Kenya Ferry Services do not have any rescue team to speak of. I'm telling you, they do not.
Yet they operate actually.
They do not.
And they have had incidences before.
Yes. They do not have. They do not have. They rely on volunteers. And there's one volunteer team. It's actually called the Kenya Rescue Divers and Lifesavers Organization. Volunteer. They do not have.
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about disaster. Yes, scary thought, isn't it?
It is. Very unsettling.
Yes. You would have assumed there would be a boat. There'd be divers on standby daily. People were just employed.
Ready.
You would assume so.
Yeah.
Yes, they don't have it. But I was simply taking this from the discussion we're having. I was saying it's symptomatic. You're talking about Nssf. You're talking about this. It's not different. You're talking about the same thing. Just this. That one just as money disappears, which shouldn't disappear, because money never disappears. Somebody takes
it.
Yes. In this case, some safety measure which anyone who would use a ferry would know wasn't followed, and here we have a disaster yet again. If you read the story, it's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. That's what it is. Because you're looking at the life of a 4-year-old child and her mother snuffed out. I mean, and that's just the ones that we see.
Unnecessary.
Unnecessary. Yeah. It's very sad that when we look at something like this that did not need to happen.
Yep.
Remember, a school wall collapsed and children died.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Aden Duale has said that the Minister for Education should be held accountable. He's right.
He is right.
And here we are again, also, the Kenya Ferry Services. So, yes, what did you do about it? It's right there.
It's a daily service.
But even going beyond this city, there has been a lot of talk on putting up a bridge at Ntongwe.
There has been. The thing is it's a decades-old discussion.
Over and over again. Yes. Even cable cars.
JICA made a proposal many, many years ago. First of all, they talked about probably having a tunnel. It's been done before.
Yeah.
Okay. They talked about the bridge, and land was created for it. Plans were made. The blueprint was done. It's not something that is in its initial stages. It's very advanced. The last I heard of it is that they were about to commence. What I know did happen was that the bypass that takes you from the mainland and goes directly to the south coast, that particular bypass, that one is actually functioning even as I speak right now. But as for the bridge, I heard that they were supposed to commence. I have not heard anything else.
This speaks to our value or lack thereof for human life, really. If we're going to go down and get granular, we don't have a value for it, because things like this, where you're carrying people across a body of water from point A to point B every day, several times a day, and you don't have any rescue measures put in place, it's clear that we don't have value. We don't value our human life.
The state of the ferries themselves. I mean, we keep talking about how we have acquired a new ferry, not new, but second-hand or third-hand or fourth-hand ferries. What exactly is this that we are doing?
Haven't there been several incidents of disaster at the ferry since Mtongwe?
There have been.
Oh, there have been. Yeah. The ferry has stalled. The ferry has done. You know something? What they tried to do a while back, the ferry was part of the Kenya Ports Authority. They actually hived it off and made it autonomous. And with its own MD. You would assume that that changed anything. It didn't. Remember, if you read reports that the government has brought forth, one, they secured funding for the bridge, okay, to the tune of 82 billion, right? They even told us some 3,000 people will have to be located. All that we've been told. When we talk about the will, not the ability, the will that leadership should have in order to move things forward. That particular thing went out of the window a long time ago, and it stayed out. Because there is nothing we are discussing here that was preventable, and there's nothing that we're discussing here that is not doable. No, absolutely nothing. And then now, to make matters worse, we want to borrow some more money.
For the ferry?
Yep, the star. No.
Yeah, what are we borrowing for this time?
Good grief.
The usual things. You know, we have some 692 billion.
Budget deficit.
Yes, that one we have to. Long story, and our current debt is 5.8 trillion. Yeah, but we want to look forward to borrowing another 9 trillion. Yes, that's what our minister CS for finance. He wants to put that to those who make those decisions, namely Parliament, to try and see if we can be allowed to.
If we can be allowed to.
Yes.
So that's why he was starting with this whole austerity measures talk.
Austerity measure nonsense. You know? What austerity measures?
Just to show us that there's some move that we are making some strides towards being better managers of our finances.
Eric, let me ask you. We're not spending as much. This is political talk. Okay, these measures, what are they? How do they manifest themselves? How do we see them exhibited?
Stop buying flowers. I mean, reduce those things.
You know, austerity has to be reflected in the budget to begin with. Because you can't actually spend what you don't have. Let's start in theory. Let's start that way.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at our budgets, do our budgets decrease or do they increase? Yearly.
Every year.
Yeah, so the austerity, where is it exactly? Where? Government functions. Do we see a shift in government spending less? The answer is no. Do we see a shift in government functions reducing? No. Where is the austerity?
Even where we actually cut back on budget. Remember when Uhuru Kenyatta was finance minister and he went into parliament and said, well, let's first of all look at how we are purchasing vehicles and what kind of vehicles we're using and how much fuel we're using on our vehicles. What did it bear? Did it bear any fruits?
Or when the whole fleet of vehicles actually was then purchased
we ended up buying Volkswagens.
Yeah, the vehicles were purchased. Engine, what happened to them?
The 1.8 litre engine, let's not go into a big engine, let's just operate in smaller engines. I mean, this was a talk at that point. These were austerity measures. Now we have new austerity measures by the acting CS for Treasury, and it's the same story. Let's cut back on our spending, but we've already budgeted for it, like you're saying.
You know these games that our politicians and our bureaucrats play with the minds of the citizenry?
Yep, yeah.
What on earth are they talking about? There is no indication whatsoever of any austerity. None whatsoever. None. There's no slowing down of travels. There's no slowing down of nothing. So where's the austerity?
If anything, we're spending more.
What they do is they budget for it, but they don't spend it on what? If, for instance, I'm sure they budget for buying new ferries, they budget for repairing the ferries. But when your ferry is stalling in the middle of the canal, and then doing a twist right in the middle, and it's full of passengers. To understand this, just if you simply Google search and look at the pictures of our ferry services, there is no time when the ferry services are not overloaded. They're always
there. Always
overloaded.
The case.
Meaning you have a disaster waiting to happen. Now let me tell you, the Mtongwe ferry was a small ferry. It's a very, very small ferry. Something like a quarter of the capacity of the ones we're talking about currently. So if this one decides to sink, you are not talking about 300. You're talking about over 1,000 people.
It's many more.
Yes.
Many, many more. Tragedies that keep happening all the time in our country, and, well, what do we seem to be doing about it? This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's coming up to 20 minutes after 6 o'clock, and we are on our conversation. So we've been looking at some of the big stories in our headlines this morning. Let's also take a look at some of our big stories that are happening in the country this morning. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and on Twitter, Spice FM KE, on our YouTube as well, Spice FM KE, and also, of course, on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. In the Situation Room this morning, we've got Okoh, Njeri Thorne, CT Muga, and I'm Eric Latiff. Well, we are 94.4 in Nairobi, 7.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.6 in Malindi. So, guys, We saw a tragedy last week on Monday at the Precious Talent School in Ngando, Dagoretti South. We also saw on the same day the CS for Education, that is George Magoha. He went there to that school and he said, well, you know, this is a tragedy. It has happened. It's very unfortunate. The first thing we want to do is transfer these children to different schools so that we can see what happens here. And then the second day he came back and said, all right, so now we've started transferring the children, but then we should also make people culpable for this. And this is the owner of the school should be held culpable for this. And we're going to go around the country inspecting all the schools. And if we find any other school that is substandard just like this one, we're going to shut it down. But of course, we're going to ensure that we can transfer the children to other neighboring schools. And that is public facilities. And then, of course, on Thursday, the Education PS, that's Belio Kipsang, he issued a circular to all regional and county education officers, education directors, and he told them, go and inspect all the schools in your areas. And if you find any school that is substandard, make sure that you shut it down. And make sure that you transfer the children to other schools. The question, however, is, when a school is operating, who is supposed to be regulating it? And that's the Ministry of Education. So in the case of Precious Talent, somebody in the Ministry of Education dropped the ball. Blood should spill at the Education Ministry over this. Because we keep talking about, yes, we are taking somebody to court. This is the owner of the school. We are going to transfer children from this. Yes, this is the parents are going to ensure that they take their children to the nearby schools. But we are not mentioning at all the people who did not do their job, and that is the Education Ministry officials. Who is it who should have gone there to ensure that this school is actually performing properly? Has proper structures, is meeting all the standards of an education facility. Somebody at the Education Ministry, and they're there at your local level. There's a county director, there's a regional director. Their job is mandatory to come and inspect schools all the time. Somebody did not inspect the school clearly. Somebody did not come in and check and see, well, there's something wrong in the school, and you guys, let's make sure that the children are not on the first floor of this classroom or, in fact, in this school at all until you meet the standards. But now we're talking about, let's take the owner of the school to court. Yes, that's okay. But who else needs to go to court? Somebody who did not do their job.
I think with something like this, of course, responsibility is cascaded down in layers. It's not one individual. Everybody has a responsibility, and it's delegated. Different aspects and different jobs and tasks are delegated. And then, of course, there comes in the twist of the fact that some education is devolved. So there were actually nursery school students, which is lower education, or what's the terminology for it? Early learning. Early development or early childhood development. You'll find that falls under county responsibility, yet those kids also in sort of primary school, and that falls under national government. So I think there's that issue there. Who was actually responsible? Was it the county in terms of early education, or was it the national government? But of course, with regards to pointing to the minister, yes, he's got some questions to answer, but these would have been responsibilities that have been delegated down to inspectors and so on. So you need to find what the causal link was. Who was it that was negligent of or didn't perform a duty that they're tasked with? It doesn't have to be the minister, because you can imagine how many things, and I'm not trivializing what happened in any way, shape or form, But you can imagine how many things he has to deal with. Going to every school is not his personal duty. He's delegated that task. So there's other people who should be held accountable.
Those are the people I'm talking about. I'm actually not saying that CS Magoha should step aside. I'm saying CS Magoha should take action.
Oh, he should.
He should take action.
Oh, he should step
step
aside.
aside.
Oh,
Step
yes,
aside.
he should.
Okay.
Oh, yes, he should.
I'm thinking
Look,
the first thing that before he steps aside, he should ensure that the people who should have done their job actually first of all step aside.
Look.
So he's there pontificating and saying, you know what, this is wrong. We're going to ensure that the person who built this school takes responsibility for it. But he's not saying, I have officers who should have come and
Eric,
done this.
A report that vilified this very school, among others, was brought to the fore 5 years ago. Okay? 5 years ago. Yes, Njeri is right. There's an inspectorate. There are people who do these things within the ministry. Yes, but it is his ministry. So far, no heads have rolled in that ministry. None.
Given the magnitude of the
None.
incident, given
None,
that people
none,
died,
none,
lost
none.
their lives, absolutely.
None. I'm comparing this with the Likoni Ferry, where when the Kenya Navy was asked, they were saying, to dive in this shark-infested waters, you need specialized equipment. So, you suddenly need specialized equipment for a service that has been in existence since 1937. It's not as though the sharks came here on that particular day. It's not as though the sharks started living in those waters on that day, and the Navy didn't start existing yesterday. They didn't know. No. If someone is to be serious about it, pictures of the minister carrying desks won't cut it. There are people who are responsible. What are they still doing sitting in their desks? They should have gone home a long time ago and should have been facing criminal charges, because that is what they have brought about, that disaster because of their negligence. And him as a person in charge, if he's not to step down, then he must give very good reason why he isn't.
Why he is not
And that
stepping
is
down.
done by demonstrating it, by taking action. Action is not a question of transferring students. No, that's not it. That's not it.
Action, according to the ministry, is ordering an inspection of all schools.
And then what?
Action, according to ministries, is closing down schools. Like now, we've shut down how many schools in Kibera?
That doesn't-
4 schools in Kibera have been shut down. 500 students have had to be transferred to other schools. That's action, according to the education ministry.
But then it begs the question, and then what?
Exactly.
We risk the danger of looking at all these actionables without realizing that that's all they will be. They will just be actions that have been taken, and then we still sit in this puddle of mud. Because we will talk about it for the next couple of months, and then it will be another case swept under the carpet without, and that's why I was saying earlier, it's just that our value for human, really, our value
Eric.
for human life has basically, the window that CT was talking about, our value for human life has been thrown out the window a long time ago.
Eric,
And we risk, we talk about the actionables. Okay, they've transferred children to another school, they've shut down the school, and then what? The same people who were mediocre about their action are still sitting.
So they will
in
let it happen
office.
again.
They will
are you
let it
telling
happen
me
again.
that these substandard, sub-zero schools only exist in Nairobi County?
And then you
No.
go to Kibera, and then you close
What?
down. Those are
And
the
it-
places where
it
you
close
close down
them.
the school.
When you go to a low rent area, do you really expect the schools that you find there will be of the sort of caliber you find in these high-end schools? The answer is a definite no. So, what is it that the ministry, if you're talking about a problem, what is the ministry doing about this nationwide? Because these schools exist throughout the whole country.
Exactly.
What is it?
They are there everywhere.
This is window dressing.
The education ministry registers these schools, recognizes them as schools. That's why they also are education centers and examination centers, because they've been registered as schools. In fact, we even have cases where public schools as well are in dilapidated state. And it's been reported.
It's
These
reported all
reports,
the
okay,
time.
and then this culture that we have of reporting, you know what we would rather have done? Just like we're saying, everybody who was involved, whether we're cascading from the top down, everybody who was involved or really not involved in this process did not do their job. You'll be asked to step aside. Let's do our due diligence, and then we can report. Because right now people are sitting about going, investigating, and then they're doing a report without us dealing with the matter at hand. After some time, like I said, we're going to forget about it, and then we're going to come and give people a report. Oh, actually, a report was done. We knew then, 5 years ago, that these schools were in a very poor state. We do something about it now, because people will forget. Also, our penchant for being able to forget is actually very high. It's actually quite amazing. We are able then to forget, and lives were lost. People died. Money wasn't stolen.
Young lives were lost.
Even we're able to forget about that now as if it's not a
Eric.
tragedy. Money wasn't stolen. People died. Lives were snuffed out.
To add insult
because of
to
someone's
injury,
mediocrity.
please remember that 5 years ago, not only did we indicate and know the schools that were in a sorry state, but money was even set aside.
10 million shillings at least.
At that point in time,
It was
to give them a
set aside
to give them a facelift so that they would reach the standards that are required 5 years ago. So, before someone tells us of a new commission being set up, can they tell us what they did with the previous report?
Exactly. And the previous funds that were done,
Yes.
that were used.
This is window dressing. If the minister is out of his depths, he should just say he's out of his depths, really. That these are things which are beyond him.
He can't do.
He actually can't do it.
He can't do this job.
So other people who are probably a better place to do should do so.
There are sharks in this ministry. I can't touch them. There are untouchables in this ministry. I can't touch them. Because why is he not touching anybody? I mean, he's coming here. He's talking tough.
He's not talking stuff.
and
that
yes.
guy sounds to me like he's running scared.
And yes, we also have the responsibilities at the county level. So we saw the governor come in and say, well, first of all, people who are in charge of inspecting buildings and licensing buildings, you step aside.
How many CECs went?
He's 2 CECs
Yes.
and various officers.
Yes.
2 CECs and 14 other officers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Step aside.
did he delay? No.
It was immediate.
He just said, step aside as we look into this thing.
Then we can report.
Now, the Ministry of Education, whose docket it actually is, this is not a county affair, really, except for the building permits and so forth. The running of the school, ministry, nothing. Schools closed, a few tired-looking desks moved around, photo shoots with the minister carrying a desk.
Children surrounding him, which was not necessary. The optics of it were actually quite pathetic, if we want to be serious. But yes, we need to be very, very serious. And this is what I was saying. This is the kind of noise that we make that we actually see in a positive, that we should actually see in a positive light. Because if we keep quiet, again, it will be swept under the carpet. And then when we have another disaster, we are going to have we're going to be complaining and we're going to be shedding tears once again. More lives will be lost. It sounds very it sounds like doomsday, but that's the truth. If we don't insist on certain things happening now, as far as a disaster of this manner is concerned, we will have the same thing happening again. More lives, unfortunately, will be lost.
8 lives were lost last week on Monday at the Precious Talent School in Ngando, Dagoretti South constituency. We saw a Ministry of Education officials going there and saying, well, let's close down this school, let's transfer these pupils to other schools. In fact, let's start a nationwide inspection of all schools. However, 8 lives were lost in Ngando last week. Those 8 lives, their blood rests on the officials of the Ministry of Education. Blood should spill. Good morning. It's 6:30.